There was once a professor who gave a lecture, and a reporter from the McNeil Lehrer show came to report on it. And after the professor spoke for over an hour, the reporter went up to him and said, "You know, I would love to put something down about you. Do you think you could say what you just said in about 2 minutes?" And he said, "Sure." He said, "Well, why didn't you?" I hope my goal today is that in however long it takes me to teach Peric Gimmel, that you can all go home and in 2 minutes really be able to say what the Peric is all about. So today we're up to Peric Gimmel of Mesillas Yesharim, the book by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. Last Peric, Peric Beis, talked about understanding the trait of zehirus, of watchfulness. Peric Gimmel is slightly a continuation of that in the fact that it talks about understanding the categories of zehirus. So you kind of needed last Monday a little in order to fully understand today, but I'll see how we can move forward. Watchfulness, basically, zehirus is watching your actions and being careful of what you do. So let's begin. Everyone has a handout? Who wants a handout? Okay, I underlined the certain parts that I'm going to read. Hinei haratzeh lefakeach al atzmo. If someone sincerely wants to take charge of himself, evaluating and reevaluating his actions, shtayim hinei hashkafot hatzrichos lo. There are two correct issues that he needs to go about this midah of watchfulness. Ha'achas, the first one, sheyisbonein mahu hatov ha'amiti, that he needs to determine what is true good. Sheyivchar bo ha'adam, and once he determines that, he needs to choose it. Vehara ha'amiti, and he needs to determine what's true evil. Sheyanus mimenu, that he's going to run away from, he has to flee from. The boundaries between good and evil must be very distinct and clear in our minds, because there can be no confusion as to what is really good and what is really wrong, and what constitutes right and wrong and good and evil. If that distinction is blurred, so then we find ourselves kind of between the two. One time we lean towards good, and one time we lean towards evil. If it's not clear, then we're really nowhere. And once we have finally attained that intellectual understanding of what is tov amiti, what is truly good, he continues and says, Yivchar bo ha'adam. It's not just enough to intellectually know it, you have to choose it. You have to follow it. Interestingly enough, with evil, it's so powerful that you can't just say, "Sorry, evil, I don't have any interest in you." Because what happens is, evil has interest in us regardless of our lack of interest in it. And unless we make a point of, as he says, yanus mimenu, unless we make a point of fleeing from it, it's going to come and pursue us. You cannot stop at merely not wanting the bad. You have to take it further. You have to learn to fear it, as so much so that you actively try to escape it. It's like me and dogs. I'm afraid of dogs, so much so that I will do everything in my power to make sure I don't come in contact with one. Okay? I hear that little tinkle of the collar of a dog like a mile away, and I'm ready for it because I'm so afraid. That, halavai, I should be able to take that fear, like of dogs, and fear evil, because that's what we need to do. Actively make sure that we get away from it. V'hashenis, and the second one, is al ha'ma'asim asher hu oseh. Okay, the actions that we're already doing. Lir'os im hei miklal hatov o miklal hara. Whether our actions, we need to determine whether our actions fall under the true good category or the ra amiti, the true evil category. In an honest assessment, are the things we do and the way we live good or bad, right or wrong? Where do we stand? not last week, but I think 2 weeks ago, I read in the Yatzed, Growing with Passion by Rabbi Leff. I highly recommend Rabbi Leff's weekly articles. And he had a thing on, what does God really think of me? You ever ask yourself, what does God really think of me? How am I doing, God? If we would ask ourselves every day, he says, how am I doing? I think Mayor Koch was the one who used to say, how am I doing? How am I doing? How am I doing, God? We might not be so happy with God's true answer to us. And this was Hashem's actual first question of Adam. When Adam hides, he says, Ayeka, where are you, Adam? How are you doing? And I always repeat Rabbi Krohn's concept that he takes the letters Aleph, Yod, Chaf, Hey, where the first time we see it is Ayeka, Hashem says to Adam, where are you? And then we see the same letters, Aleph, Yod, Chaf, Hey, in Eicha. How did you get there? And these are the questions we need to ask ourselves. Where am I? Are my deeds good? And if not, well, how did I get here and how do I get out of here? And that's really what this Peric is about. We're not bad people, but Ramchal's basically stating that our faulty behavior a lot of time results from the fact, not so much our improper thoughts, but the fact that we're not really thinking at all, okay? In other words, we act out of habit without thinking about our behavior. So he continues, we need to do these two things. We have to ask ourselves, what is it that I want to accomplish? What is it that I wish to do? And what is the method by which I'm going to achieve this? And this is a process that can really help us determine if our actions are genuine or if they're counterfeit. Because the mind is a great thing. I mean, we know when you're doing something genuine. You really do. You feel it in your bones. When you do something right, you know it. But other times we kind of believe what we're doing is right and proper because we rationalize our behavior and we say, I would only do what's right, so if I did it, it's got to be right. And I want it to be right. I want it to be correct. So I'm very good at talking it into myself. We're really good at that. So,
you know the difference.
I'm sorry?
If you're rationalizing as opposed to knowing the difference, how can you discern?
I'm going to tell you right now. Good question. Okay? How do we know whether our actions are genuine or counterfeit? Most of the time, it's a hard thing to know. So he says we have to do this. We have to question ourselves, bishat maaseh, at the time that we're going to do something. So what happens is when a person looks temptation squarely in the eye, okay, all of a sudden you can't see straight anymore. Whether it's food, jealousy, revenge, lust, whatever that desire is, our clarity of vision is no longer there because of this temptation. A decision that's made impulsively at a time when the deed is being done, with that nisayon smack in front of you, can very well be disastrous. But when the burning urge cools off and you no longer act on impulse, so then we have half a chance of making an objective decision. So we need to make careful deliberations before we actually do that thing. So here's the hard thing, is when the impulse is there and you want to do it, you have to actually say to yourself, I know I'm being impulsive right now, and I know that my desire is very strong, so let me just take a step back from my desire just for a moment and figure out why I'm doing what I'm about to do. I didn't really answer your question yet, okay, I'm getting there. He also says that we have to do it v'shelo b'shat maaseh, after the fact. I blew it. I did something wrong, and it's after the fact. So I can't change what I did right now. But does that mean that it's over? Deed done, forget it, what's the use? I can't retract my actions anyway, so why even think about it? Why am I agonizing over it? Why am I even contemplating what I did? According to Ramchal, this is far from futile. It's actually vital. So we need to ask ourselves, just as another thought, do we give as much consideration to our spiritual and ethical rights and wrongs as we do to our economic rights and wrongs? And I saw a story of Rabbi Levi Yitzhak Badichev. I love his stories. He's an amazing person, where he was a shochet, and he happened to be traveling, and he came to town, and a man came up to him, and he said, I heard that you're a shochet, and I have a big problem. I have a cow that's sickly, that could possibly die within the next 2 days, and my regular shochet is not coming back for another week. And if the cow dies, I lose out all that money from, not being able to sell to my customers. So could you please shech this cow for me? He said, no problem, be my pleasure. He says, but I'm also collecting money, that's why I'm here. I'm collecting money for my daughter's wedding. Could you lend me 50 ruble and I'll get it back to you at some point? And he says, well, you think I'm crazy? I'm gonna give you 50 ruble, I don't even know who you are. So he says, you're willing to accept that I tell you I'm a proper shochet, where you could possibly serve treif to all your people, that you're willing to accept. But when it comes to money, you're not willing to accept that I'm an upstanding person? Do we give that same consideration as we do to our monetary and physical stuff as we do to our spiritual and ethical? That is something we need to think about. So what should we do? What we have to do is we really have to figure out and look and see, what are we going to do lasur min harahahu, to get ourselves away from this bad once we've determined it. And Chazal say, Noach lo la'adam shelo nivra yotzer mishenivra, that it would have been better for man had he not been created than it is that he was created. Ve'achshav, but now, shenivra, that we are created, yifashfesh b'ma'asav, he should scrutinize, he should examine his actions. Ve'ika demare, and there are others that say yimashmesh b'ma'asav, that he should feel out his actions. And this is the answer of how can we decide whether we're genuine or counterfeit in our actions. So our sages tell us that considering all the facts of man's existence, it would have been better had we not been created. Because life in this world is a series of trials and tribulations and tests. And inevitably there are going to be those who will fail the tests and succumb to the trials, and as a result, we're going to be punished. But God decided to create us anyway, so here we are. So how can we overcome the trials that are part of our everyday life? And how can we hope to succeed? So we're taught that we need to scrutinize our actions and feel them out, which means to constantly evaluate and reevaluate the deeds of our lives. Yifash fesh means to examine, and yimashmesh means to feel out. What is the difference? So it says, V'tireh sheshnei halashonos hem shtei asaros tovos umolilos ma'od, that both of these words and interpretations, yifash fesh, to examine, yimashmesh, to feel out, both of them are worthy explanations. Let's try and understand them. Ki hinei hapishpush b'ma'asim, the one who examines his deeds, hu lachkor al klal hama'asim. It means to really investigate your deeds in a general manner, a consideration of them to determine whether they might be good, or maybe there are certain actions which I need to remove from myself, and they need to be eradicated. Hanimsa bahem ma'asim asher lo ya'asu asher einam hochim bo. That maybe I'll pi mitzvah Hashem v'chukav. That maybe there are some things there that I'm not doing right, and I need to get rid of them. Ki kol asher yimatzeh me'ela yiva'aru min ha'olam. Because I need to eradicate those that are causing me problems, that are not good. Ach hamishmush. But the one who feels it out, what is it? Hachakira afilu b'ma'asim tovim atzmam. Yifashfesh is to look in general at my actions. Are they good or are they bad? And if they're bad, I need to get rid of them. Yimashmesh is to look at my good actions. Okay? Alachkor v'lerot hayesh b'inyanam eze piniya asher lo tova. Maybe inside my good actions, there's something there that's not so good. Oh, eze chelet ra, or there's something bad or wrong, sheyitztarech lahasiro, that I need to get rid of. Now, he kind of gives a mashal and a nimshal, but it's like a person feeling a garment, okay? I feel the garment. to determine the quality of the material. Is it sturdy? Is it weak? Will it hold up to 1,000,000 washings or not? The difference, do you ever watch a woman choose vegetables in the store? Okay, looks at each one. Let me look at this tomato and feel it. Sometimes I watch women. Me, I just pick it up, but they put effort into finding, the best one. So what it is that Yefash Fesh, here's a good example. I go to Loman's, I'm looking for a new skirt, okay? Yefash Fesh is I go like this, and I look to see which one is long, okay? I found a long one. Yemashmesh is I pull out the long one now that I found it, and then I look at it carefully. Is it good? Is it not good? Do I like the material? Do I like the color? That's the difference. The first one is a more general. The second one is you're really going into it, okay? And that's what we need to do. Not only do we need to look at our actions, but we need to scrutinize them and feel them out by subjecting them to this scrutiny, determining their nature, okay? You can't just say, I have good deeds, I have bad deeds, I'm doing a good deed, but if you scrutinize your good deeds, if you really scrutinize them, you're going to know whether they're genuine or whether they're counterfeit. Rav Twersky tells an amazing story about two Hasidim, and they're having a conversation about what their judgment day is going to look like and what they're afraid of. The first one says, I'm so afraid, of all my sins. I'm afraid of the many sins that I did. The second one says, I'm not afraid of my sins. I'm just going to tell God, you know what? The Yetzirah temptation was too much for me. What I'm afraid of is my mitzvos. How did I do my mitzvos? Did I do them by rote? I was davening, I was learning Torah. Why did I stop to talk? Why did I allow myself to wander? Did I give that tzedakah in front of everyone so that people should see and they'll be impressed with me? Or did I do it for the right reason? In other words, we're doing mitzvos, but why are we doing them? If you look inside, really honestly, you're going to know whether it's genuine or counterfeit, for sure. He's going to say, help. There's a story about Reb Zusha that he was going to, I forgot which Rebbe, I'm sorry. He was going to a Rebbe, he needed, he would go for bracha. And his wife would say to him, listen, we got some nice available daughters at home, you got to go and ask for bracha for the girls. We got to get them married. And he would go every year and come back, and he was so engrossed in the Rebbe and everything that was going on that he would forget to ask for the bracha for his daughters. And one year his wife said, look, this is really, enough. So he gave him a bracha, and he said, I even have, some money someone gave me specifically for achnasas kala. Here, take it home, and you'll marry off your daughter, and everything will be good. He said, thank you so much. And on his way home, carrying the bag of money, he heard music. So he went to see what's going on. Chasana, I'm going to go be Mesameach Chasana Kala. So he goes, and he hears the music, but he also hears the chassan fighting with the kala's mother. What's the problem? She promised a certain amount of money. She's a poor woman, and she had the money. And the day of the wedding, she was so famished that she doesn't know where she put the money. And the wedding's going to be off, and it's going to be awful and everything. And he says, how much money did you lose? And she tells the amount. And he quickly goes, and he changes his money into whatever money that town used, and the exact amount, and says, I found your lost bag of money. And the wedding goes on, and everyone picks him up on a chair, the hero who found the lost bag of money, and everyone's so happy. And after a little while of dancing, he goes, by the way, I want 20% back. Everyone says, 20% back? What a guy, how horrible, and no one cares about him anymore. Why did he do that? Because he realized that he was enjoying the honor of the mitzvah that he did, and it was no longer a mitzvah genuine, that it was counterfeit now. He was getting something from it. And therefore he had himself like, who cares about this guy? Look at him, he's two-faced, he's this, he's that. And gone he was. If we sincerely look into why we're doing what we're doing, we will know whether it is genuine or counterfeit. So we have to be alert to our own mental state and be honest about our motivations even when performing mitzvahs. Another thought is, at whose expense are we performing mitzvahs? If you have two guys who are roommates in yeshiva, and one guy decides, I'm going to get up at tikkun chatzot, midnight every night. Well, in yeshiva, they're probably still up, but let's say they go to sleep early. And he gets up, and he turns on the lights, and he wakes up his roommate every night. At whose expense is he doing the mitzvah? When you daven with kavana, it's very nice to daven with kavana, but if you're davening out loud and you're disturbing the person in front of you, behind you, next to you, at whose expense are you doing your mitzvah? So we need to put thought into the mitzvos that we are doing. So I'm in the second page in the middle paragraph where it's underlined. V'hineni ro'eh tzorach la'adam. And he's saying, okay, let's summarize. Okay, I see that a person has to sheyeh medakdek v'shokel drachav dvar yom biyomo. That you have to observe your actions, really make sure that you don't have any bad habits and that you leave them behind, your bad traits, let alone a sin or a crime. He continues and he said that there's a need for a person to do this yom biyomo, every single day. That you have to carefully examine and weigh them daily in the manner of what? Kisocharim hegadolim, like great merchants. Asher yifalsu tamid kol iskehem leman lo yiskalkalu. That what do great merchants do? Every single day, they constantly evaluate all of their business affairs. Because if they don't, they're going to lose business. V'yigba itim, not only that, you should set aside kavua, to itim, times, v'sha'os, lazed, that you have to set aside specific times for doing this. Shelo yeh mishkalo arai, that it shouldn't be like some fortuitous thing that just comes and goes. If you set a specific time, ela b'kfiyut gadol, a specific regularity, ki rav hatoladahi, then it yields great returns. If you set aside, most people, I think the best time to do it is when you lay me down to sleep, put your head on the pillow and you can actually, no one's talking to you anymore and just think with your thoughts. I have a cousin who I remember when she was bringing up her children, and she had many, she would say to me, every night I put my head on my pillow and I think, which child did I not give enough attention to today? That's someone I learned from her who goes through her actions throughout the day. That was vis-a-vis her children. But if we do that, that's what we need to do. Take the time at a regular time, just like when you daven, it's good to have a regular time that you daven, a regular chair that you daven in. It has a kfiyus to it. It has that's what we need. So this is one thing that he is certainly telling us to do. So one thing we know for sure that happens is change. Okay, life doesn't stay the same, it's constantly changing. So how then can we expect to carry on as we did yesterday? We have to constantly evaluate. We have to reassess our duties on a daily basis and adjust them according to the way we are just today. It's like looking, you listen to CBS and I don't know if it's like at 25 past the hour and 55 past the hour is the stocks, we know how we're doing. So just like we follow the stocks, on the fives, you have to follow your life, follow your ups and downs and the changes that will affect you. Okay. And our Chachamim are trying to guide us. Okay? They're trying to guide us here. What did they say? That in Bamidbar, we're talking about that the rulers say, Kam Cheshbon is the name of a place. The Gemara talks about it and says, Al Kain Yomru HaMoshlim B'Yitzram. So too, the people who rule over the Yetzer Hara, they say, what do they advise us? What do they say? Bo'u unechashev cheshbono shel olam. What do we need to do? We need to calculate. They say, let's calculate. Hefseid mitzvah keneged schara. What's the loss incurred by performance of a mitzvah in comparison to the reward? Uschar aveira. And what's the gain of a sin keneged hefseida compared to the loss that it entails? So, for example, let's say you're in business, and even not business, could be a woman, doesn't be a man at all. It's mincha time. Mincha time's approaching, and the need to close the deal is urgent right now. So you can't do both. You're either going to daven mincha or you're going to close the deal. If you close the deal, you miss the time for daven mincha, and your opportunity to daven mincha for that day is gone. You have an opportunity to give tzedakah, but if you give tzedakah, you lose your money. So we have a schar plus a loss of money. If we do the deal, or if we keep the money and not give the tzedakah, we gain the money, but we lose the schar. So we find ourselves in a quandary, okay? We're faced with a choice. If we do one thing, then we forego the other. So if we enjoy the sin, then we suffer in Olam Haba. We're going to suffer its punishment. Is it worth it? So we have these passing pleasures in Olam Hazeh versus the eternal rewards in Olam Haba. And I think the real question is, what's more important? This world or the next? So we have to at least be aware that we have the opportunity to choose what we feel is most important. And we should at least think about our choices as they present themselves. Often we do not. And by the way, I'm not saying this is easy. It's not easy. So since it's not easy, Ramchal advises us how to continue to move forward with it. He says that we need guidance. We need someone to guide us. And the proper guidance can only be given by those who have an accurate perception of reality. If you look, it says, where are we? Lo yichlu latet osa, that we can't, who can give this advice to us? Ella osam shekfar yatsu mitachad yad yitzram. Only people who have already removed themselves from the hand of their Yetzer Hara, umashlubo, and they are the ones who are ruling over their Yetzer Hara. A person's perception is often distorted by his desires, and he's blinded. It's as if you're walking in darkness and there's a stumbling block in front of you, and before you know it, it's dark and you can't see it. And that's a problem. And our desires is what kind of twists our perception and gets in the way. We all know that a judge says in Torah can't, you're not allowed to accept any bribery. Not a judge, not anyone. You can't accept bribery. I remember when we first moved to New York, my father was head of the kashrus at the OU. And a lot of the companies that had the OU would send these packages to our house of all their different foods and stuff. And I would run to the door and my father would say, "Don't open it!" I mean, why not? He says, "We have to send it back. We can't accept anything from any of them because it's considered a bribe." I'm like, "You don't have to accept it, I will." He never let me. But the point is, you can't accept a bribe because it twists your perception of reality. There was a story about the Abd Rav, this points out so much so that there's a bribe that sometimes you don't even realize the bribe is there. Like, we're blinded to the bribe. He said that he was once on a Beis Din, and after 2 or 3 days, he just removed himself. He didn't know why, but he just had to remove himself because he felt himself leaning towards one of the litigants. And before Shabbos, he put on his Shabbos frock, his robe, whatever, and he found in the pocket an envelope with a bribe from the person who felt himself leaning. He didn't even know about the bribe yet he somehow felt that leaning towards him. So that's how much a bribe can blind us. And we need to watch out for that. So we're all bribed by our desires, and therefore we're blinded to reality due to these distorted perceptions. So our problem is that sometimes we see them and sometimes we don't. And sometimes even when we see them and we know we're seeing it, it still blinds us. And he says, V'hinehu kaholech b'choshech. It's like someone who goes in the dark. Sheyesh lefanav mechshalos, that there are stumbling blocks. Ve'einav ra'ososam, and you don't even see them. Tashes choshech v'hi laila. It says in Tehillim that Hashem laid down darkness and it became night. Ze olam hazeh shedomeh l'laila. That Hashem says olam hazeh, where we are right now, it reminds us of the nighttime. That what? Ki hinei choshech halayla shnei minei ta'uyos efsharlo sheyigrom la'ein ha'adam. That when it's dark, the darkness of night, there are 2 problems that man can have from this, that his eyes could have from it. 2 types of errors in relation to man's eye. O yechuseh et ha'ayin ad shelo yireh mashe lefanav klal. Either it's so dark outside that you literally can't see anything in front of you. O sheyat'eh oso ad sheyereh lo amud ke'ilu hu adam ve'adam ke'ilu amud. Or it deceives him, the darkness, so much so that a pillar appears to him as a person And a person appears to him as a pillar. So you could go up and talk to, I'm going to talk to this, thinking that it's a person, because it's so dark that you can't really figure out what's in front of you. So the nimshal is that the first one, that's just so dark, it doesn't permit you to see the stumbling blocks in your way. It's so dark, you literally can't see the block in front of you. Okay? And he continues to say, Derech v'sha'im ka'afela lo yadu b'ma yikashelu. That it's a Rasha who's not looking, who's feeling confident and just say, oh, I don't know, I can do whatever I want, at the end falls. And it's like a man walking down the street and saying, oh, it's great, I can see, and then falls into a manhole. That's, if you take that darkness as if you can't see anything, then you are definitely going to fall. But you walk around without experiencing any prior fear because you're not looking for anything, unlike me who's looking for that dog. The second one, so the first mistake is that you're not looking for anything. Second mistake, hata'ut, hasheni, v'hu kashem min harishon. This one is more serious than the first one. Hu shemat'eh re'iyasam at sheroim hara ki'ilu hu mamash tov, v'hatov ki'ilu hara. That just like you see, you think a man is a pillar or a pillar is a man, that you think good is bad and bad is good. That you mistake evil for good and good for evil. And persists in self-defeating behavior where you're convinced that good is and it's really wrong. And that's the problem. And the reason Ramchal considers number 2 more serious than number 1 is because if a person stumbles in the dark and they fall and they hurt themselves, so they're immediately going to realize that if I continue walking in the dark, I'm likely to get hurt again because I can't see anything in front of me. So what does he do? Well, wait until the morning when it gets light and then I'll continue on. But the one who thinks that he can actually see in the dark, the one who thinks that it's okay that I'm talking to a pillar, actually misperceives reality. And he probably won't be brought to his senses as quickly as the one who actually gets hurt. And he continues and he says, I'm going to switch to the next page where it says, who can help someone who thinks that he can see when he really can't? The person who has already come out of this. Those who have already freed themselves from this bondage of darkness, they can see clearly, and only they can advise others in relation to this. So what he's trying to say here is that if you think you can't figure out where you are, am I genuine, am I counterfeit, am I good, am I not good, what do I do? If you need the advice, and most of us do, you have to go to someone who's capable of giving you the advice. Okay? Ignorance is not bliss. People caught in the trap who don't grasp what's happening, that's not a good place to be. Our heart builds up a protective crust, and our ears, all of a sudden, we have hearing trouble, and our eyes, our vision becomes blurred. And why is that? Because if our faculties were really all sharp and good, so then if we felt, we saw, we heard, then we would realize just how much we need to change. So we basically become totally and utterly subservient to our Yetzer Hara? Hopefully not. The worst is when you don't even realize that something is wrong. I teach Shmiras HaLashon to my 8th grade students at Hafter, and I tell them at the beginning of the year, we have it once a week, I say, I can't promise that at the end of the year you will not be speaking Lashon Hara, but I can promise that you know you'll be speaking Lashon Hara. And there's a difference, okay? Once we know it, and we know that things are not so good, that we're making mistakes, now we can go further and try and get the advice on how to get out of it. So we have to make an accounting, okay? Ba'u cheshbon, it says, and see how far that Yetzer Hara is taking us. He's blinding us, and he's turning our falsehoods into truths and our truths into falsehood. So the Ramchal gives a great analogy, a fantastic analogy. Halamada zeh domeh, what does this compare to? Lagan hamivucha, a garden maze, a corn maze. Okay? Plants are arranged in walls. They're found many confusing paths in between. They're big walls of let's say, corn, and you walk on the paths, and you don't know where you're going. And some paths take you to your goal, and some paths don't. So there are two goals. The main goal is to try and get out, okay? But there's another goal, that there's a bridge in the middle of the maze. And if you get to that bridge, so then you can be guided how to get out. So the walker between the paths has no way of seeing whether he's on the right path, the true path, or the false path. Every path seems same to the person, but you're not going to reach your bridge unless you successfully master the maze. So, however, v'hinei ha'omed kvar al ha'ach sadra, the person who's already standing on that bridge, hu ro'eh kol hadrachem lefanav, he sees all the little paths in front of him. Umavchen bein ha'amitim v'ha'kozvim, and he can see which paths are the right paths where you're going to make your way out, and which paths are going to take you to end up nowhere. V'hu yachol lahasir es ha'hochem bam, and he can give advice to the people inside and say, avoid that path, hey, take this one. Okay? Where he's the one, because he persists, he persisted and he got to the point of moshlim b'yitzram, where he controls his yetzer. And the person who is willing to believe him will reach the designated, goal. While the one who persists in pursuing his own intellect, who would rather see it for himself and use his own eyes, he's going to blunder and maybe not ever arrive at his goal. I actually take my 8th grade students to a corn maze every year, where I'm teaching them Parshat Chukat, where we talk about Paraduma, which is a mitzvah, it's a chok, and one that we don't understand. And we talked about all the different mitzvos, and I try to explain to them that your Torah is your guide. Whether you understand where you're going or not, the Torah understands, and the Torah guides us. And I put them in this corn maze. It's actually a cute corn maze because it has posts in the middle with numbers on it, and they give you a hint, like a cheat sheet. And if you make your way to a post where there's a number, if you're lucky enough to get there, because it's very confusing, it'll say any hint in whatever subject you were taught. You could pick whatever you want, whether it's math or different subjects where you pick. And let's say it was just, what's 1 plus 1? So the answer would be 2. So it would be the letter B. And they would say all answers letter A go left, all answers letter B go right, and you see, turn around. So it helps you through. But if you make it to the bridge, then you can climb up the bridge, and then I have that view, and you can see, oh my gosh, we need to go that way. We thought we had to go this way. And it's very, very interesting. One time my group actually made it to the bridge, but the steps to the bridge were on the other side. It was very frustrating because you couldn't just walk around. You had to find that path. So it was amazing for the girls to realize that you need someone, something to help guide you through the path of life. And for us, that is our Torah. So that was my mashal and nimshal with that. And here Ramchal is using it in an amazing way. That the person who gets to stand at the top of that bridge, he's the one who's guiding you. Avoid that path. It's not a good one. Okay? Take that one instead. So those who have already been there, those who already know the ins and outs of the games, kids today, I see them in school, let's say, they're playing these games, and they're like, oh, I can't pass this board. I keep trying and trying, I can't. And the other one says, oh, I did that. I'm already on number 32. I'll tell you what you have to do. If someone who's been there and figured it out already, they're the ones who could help you. But you have to be smart enough to listen to those who are trying to help you. So there are some people who, by virtue of their experience and knowledge, can actually help. A wise person will take advantage of that wisdom and experience. Mark Twain said, I don't know how to quote him exactly, but that when I was 16, my parents knew absolutely nothing. And by the time I was 20, it was amazing how much they learned in such few years. That if you're willing to listen to the wise and the experienced, you really can gain a lot. The question is, are we likely to listen to them? So those who refuse the guidance, they are likely to wander aimlessly through the maze, and maybe after totally exhausted, finally saying, okay, let me listen. But by the time they reach their goal, they may be old and weary and have lost opportunities while they were engaged in their own futile efforts. So, the advice is that you have to take an accounting. You need to calculate. I'll read the Hebrew, by the way, okay? Kain hadavar hazeh. This is what it is. Mi she'adayin lo mashal b'yitzro. The person who has not yet conquered his Yetzer Hara. Hu b'toch hashvilim. He's inside those paths. Lo yuchal lavchin beinehem. It's hard for us to determine which path. Are we on the right path or the wrong path? We don't know. Ah hamoshlim b'yitzram. Only the ones who have already overcome their yitzram. Shekvar higiu ela achsandra. That already reached that bridge. Shekvar yatzum en hashvilim. That they made their way out of the corn maze. V'roim kol hadrachim le'eneiam b'beirur. They see all the paths very clearly. Heim yicholim liyaetz l'misha yotzeh l'shmoa. They are the ones who can guide the one who's willing to listen. Va'aleihem tzrichim anu laha'amin. And these are the ones that we have to turn to trust, to guide us in the right way. Ve'anam. And therefore, mahi ha'etza shehem nosnim lanu. What is advice for us? What is it that we need? Ba'u cheshbon. Take an accounting. Calculate. Bo'u unechashev cheshbono shel olam. Calculate all your deeds. Ki kfar heim nisu v'ra'u v'yadu shezel levado hu haderech ha'amiti. Take counsel after scrutinizing your actions. Take counsel and understand which ones you need to do. Weigh the material physical world against our spiritual world. And then he ends with klalo shel davar. Okay, this is a big klal. This is to summarize, okay? Tzarech ha'adam lihiyos misponein b'sichlo. A person must consider and determine in his brain his actions. Tamid, always. B'chol zman, all the time. Ubizman kavua, like we said, at a specific time. We need to ask ourselves, what is the correct path according to the Torah? Are my actions keeping me on that path? Or are they taking me someplace else? Let us seek out our ways and examine them, and we will return to Hashem. So we need to inspect constantly, and we need to make sure that we're on the right path according to the laws of the Torah, that our manners and mannerisms are all according to the laws of the Torah. And finally, one point. Why does Ramchal divide this process into two steps? Okay, so this is your take-home 2 minutes, okay? The first step, we said, is that you have to have an understanding of right and wrong. And the second step is to look at your own behavior and determine if your actions are genuine or counterfeit. So why can't we just go straight to looking at our own actions? And the answer is that we generally feel that if we did something, then it's right. We're biased in our own favor. And because of this tendency, it's a problem. So therefore, we need to first, our starting point in evaluating behavior must be a rock solid, objective understanding of right and wrong. Once we have that rock solid objective of understanding right and wrong, then our starting point can be to measure our behavior. Because otherwise, if our starting point to measure our behavior is our own behavior, then it becomes impossible to be impartial. So therefore, number one must be our ability to have a true understanding, a solid understanding of right and wrong, and then to understand our own actions, evaluate our behavior. And if we follow this two-step method, it'll become easy for us to cleanse ourselves of our negative actions and to straighten out what actually needs corrections. So if we examine our actions and review them critically and honestly, they're going to lead us to the road to true service of Hashem. So remember, in all walks of life, there are people who stand on top of the bridge, and from their vantage point can point us in the right direction. Those who are wise will listen. And that's what we need to do, and that is what Peric Gimmel of Mesillas Yesharim tells us to do. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer.